Hello and welcome to LibPress Refresher Training, getting the most out of your LibPress site. This webinar was delivered live on May 22nd, 2025, and recorded for the BC Libraries Cooperative YouTube channel. This is part of the LibPress Continuing Training series. Today's webinar will focus on helping you become more confident and more efficient when working with your LibPress site. This includes pages and navigation menus, highlights in the slideshow, the events calendar or tech, and the customizer, which is your site's look and feel. During my one-to-one introductory phone calls earlier this year, I heard that many of you run small libraries without much dedicated staff, so it can be hard to carve out the time to work on the site, and tasks can sometimes take longer than you were expecting. So for you folks, I hope to review the processes for some of these common changes that you might want to make on your site, and hopefully support you in becoming more efficient when making those desired changes. I heard from others that you have a high staff turnover and that not everyone at your library has had the chance to take LibPress training before jumping into managing the site. And for you, I hope to provide some basics that will get you to a place where you can feel confident to begin working on your site, even without full knowledge of all the features and functions. I've also tried to answer some of the questions that got brought up during my one-to-one calls, because I believe that if one person has the question, chances are there are going to be more people who are also wondering the same thing. I'm also going to be recapping proper formatting for site media such as images, logos, buttons, and icons. There have been some changes recently in terms of best practices around images and media formatting. So I wanted to make sure we looked at those and that everybody was aware of the changes and the functionality that's available to them. Throughout the presentation, I'll also be pointing to and demonstrating some relevant accessibility resources, which are also going to be included in the follow-up email and the resource list, which is linked at the bottom of this YouTube video. So from here on in, it will mostly be demonstration. To suit a variety of learning styles, I have a couple written slides that I'll play in between live demo sections. In instances where I've verbally given numbers or technical details that are going to be important for you to remember. So without further ado, let's do it. So I'm going to start by creating the landing page for the Summer Reading Club. So that's going to be through our dashboard page and create a new page. And I have done a lot of prep, so I won't make you watch me type a bunch of stuff out. So I've got, the body of my text here, and I'll just pop it right in. And it's important to just note that not all the details for this year's Summer Reading Club have been released yet. I checked again this morning on their site, and they're still saying we're not quite ready to go yet. So just please take everything I say here as an example and not as like a prescriptive direction for exactly what you should be doing. So the first thing that I want to do here is check our text for readability by applying plain language standards. This is something that came up from my calls. So plain language standards are a good way to make sure that your writing itself is accessible and that you're creating content that's engaging, but is also aimed at lower reading comprehension levels so that people of all ages and abilities can locate the information they need easily without barriers of unnecessarily complex sentence structure or terminology. And we also have a lot of newcomers in a lot of our communities, so we can apply these standards as well to support those who speak English as a second or additional language. And as a general rule, adult comprehension on average is about a grade 9 level. So we want to be aiming for that or just below that. And there's a tool called the Hemingway editor that we can use to check whether our writing meets that standard. So I'm going to put that guy in the chat there for you, and then I'm going to pop back over and show you that. So this is a free online tool that you may or may not have used before. Basically, you just copy paste your writing into it. Oops, I guess you need to have the right thing selected. So you just like copy and paste all of your writing into it, and it will immediately tell you where you need to make changes. So the first thing up in the corner, top right corner, you can check the readability. So my writing's at a grade 6 level, which is good. And then it's going to highlight things that need your attention. So this sentence here, we are positively ecstatic. It's telling us, you could use one word instead of two. So you can use an adverb. You can get rid of the adverb and just use a more powerful verb. It's going to tell you if you have sentences that are hard to read or very hard to read. Usually those are like length and complexity. And obviously you're going to take everything here with a grain of salt. This disclaimer down at the bottom here, you're probably not going to rewrite that, but just as a way to check and make sure you're more or less on track with your writing. So I just want to make sure folks knew about that tool, especially the readability piece. And yeah, it is free and you don't need to have an app or anything. You just use it right in the browser. So I'll get rid of that for now. We've got our text in here. I'd like to add an image. This is a good opportunity for us to review the images and alt text procedures, and I'll link you to the LibPress manual there. And adding one or two images to a page of text is helpful to break up the visual block and add interest. And from an accessibility standpoint, we want to avoid simple decorative images that don't add anything to the information, because these will present obstacles to people using screen readers or anybody using your site that has low vision. So I've already uploaded, I've pre-uploaded my images, and I'll put my cursor here. So wherever you put your cursor in the block, that's where it's going to pop your image in, and we'll use add media. This is the poster here. Um, and this is kind of one of the places where we've made some changes recently in terms of best practices for file formats and sizes for your image. So I'll put this on a slide, so don't worry. Or no, I won't put this in a slide, but it is on the image sizing page in the manual, which I'll drop into the chat here. So you want to make sure to be using appropriate file types and sizes for your image. So we've recently made a change that says that non-photographic images, these are icons, logos, simple things, these are best as a PNG file type, and you want to try to keep them under 250 kilobytes in size. So again, that is written out on that image sizing page there. Anything that's a photograph or a complex graphic is better as a JPEG format. So this summer reading club poster, it's a more complex image. It has text on it. It has a bunch of different layers. It's more fine illustration instead of just kind of like an icon or a logo. This one's going to be better as a JPEG. So just wanted to point that out here, and you can tell that when you're creating the file, and you can also tell right here in the attachment details. So next is the alt text. I've already pre-entered that. If you're using a screen reader, adding that alt text will allow for the user to easily access this information and know what they're looking at on the screen. I had some questions in my calls about what makes good alt text. And a really simple and good way to think about it is, how would you describe this image to somebody if you're talking to them over the phone? It's good to try to keep the description to under 125 characters. Any longer explanatory text should accompany the image on the page itself instead. And you want to make sure to capture any text that's in the image in your alt text. So I've done that here by adding that quote. So, and one last thing that I wanted to show you before we insert this into the page is the attachment display settings right at the very, very bottom. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this little side module, right at the bottom is size. And sometimes it will default to something other than full size, which can cause problems. We want to try to always put it in as full size, because once you put it into your page, it's really easy to shrink it down. But if you accidentally put it in as medium and then try to stretch it to be bigger, it gets fuzzy and pixelated. So I just wanted to point that out, because this is one that is kind of hidden, and also it will sometimes automatically switch itself to medium and you won't notice. And then you'll be wondering why you're having trouble formatting your image properly and it's always fuzzy. Had a few tickets lately of like, why is my image fuzzy? And this is a first thing that you can check. So I think we're ready here. I'll insert it into the page. It's going to be pretty big, so we can just resize it directly in the window. And I think a left justification would look better. Um, and we're pretty much good to go from here in terms of page content. I want you to just poke over here to the corner of on the right side and look at page attributes. So parent or attribution, This is an efficient method of organizing your page content into hierarchies. And a parent page is going to be like a top level page, and then the child pages are going to be nested under it. And the best practice is to set this up to mimic how you have it set up in your main menu, which we're going to look at shortly. So I know that I'm going to want to put this under programs. So I'm going to find that programs parent page in the drop-down menu. I'll save that just so I can show you one place where it makes a difference is in the permalink, which is right here in the middle of the page. So it's showing us what the permalink is going to look like. So that's the URL of this specific page. And you'll see that because we've made it a parent, we've made it a child of the program's parent page, it's going to give us programs and then slash summer reading club. So this is going to kind of mimic eventually how we put it into our navigational menu. So it's always a good practice to try to have those match up as much as possible. So speaking of the navigation menu, I'm going to go over to that now because we're going to want to add this page to our menu. I'm going to publish the page, of course, and then we can take a look at it, open it in a new tab. So that's kind of what it's going to look like here, just so you can get an idea of how that is going to be set up. So to get to our menu, of course, we're going to go dashboard and then appearance and menus. I like to go to the menu this way because it gives us this nice layout. I find this more spacious to work with than the other way to get into the menu. But to add an item to our menu, we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we're going to, oh, sorry, no, that's wrong. We don't have to scroll down to the bottom. We just have to look over to the left. Usually when you add a brand new page, it's just going to know that you might want to add that to your menu. So it's going to show you it right up in the top of the most recent pages. So that's pretty handy. We can add it to the menu. And then we scroll down to the bottom because the default for adding a page to your menu or any item to your menu, it's always going to put it right down at the bottom. And then it's up to you to grab it and just kind of drag it to where you want it. And you can drop it somewhere and then pick it back up again and drag it further. So I'm going to put it right at the top of programs because it's important. It's new, it's exciting. I want it to be at the very top. So I'll pop it there. And then we can save the menu. And from here we can go take a look on the site. And it should, well, that's exciting. You get to watch me do it again. Save. There we go. That's the fun thing about these real life demos is you get to watch that even the person showing you how to do it messes it up sometimes. So now that we look at our menu, we can see that Summer Reading Club, our page is right up at the top there. And so remember back to when we were creating the page and we made the Summer Reading Club page a child of the programs page. Now that we've added the page to our menu following that same hierarchy structure, our permalink will match what people see in the menu. So I hope that illustrates kind of why the page hierarchy and what we call information architecture is so important. I think it's always important to kind of think that out and plan it out before you actually try to make changes on the site. Just helps keep things a bit more orderly and making sense. I always find it's more valuable to spend time like making the vision before you start getting into the site and making changes to it. While we're talking about menu, I wanted to touch on one other piece of the navigational menu, which is how to make an inactive label in your menu or something on the menu that people can't click on. So an example here is this program's title. If I was a patron on the site and I go here, I might click that and it just takes me to this empty page, which isn't very useful. But I don't want to get rid of it because that header is really useful. So how do you keep that header but get rid of the page? So you can do something called creating an inactive label. So that will make this program's title something that people can't click on, but it will keep it there in the menu. So for the sake of our time today, I won't walk us through that, but I will, I've just refreshed the manual with instructions on how to do that. And I am actually planning to upload a short video walkthrough later today. I was going to do it this morning, but I didn't get around to it in time. But I'm going to try to do that for quite a few different parts of the manual. Just doing these really short video walkthroughs that show you step by step exactly what to do. But if that's something that you're needing to do on your site, that link will get you to the correct section of the manual for it. So I'm just going to take a quick sip of water here. Mm. The next part, I'm going to go back to our home. The next part that I wanted to touch on is the slideshow. The goal of the slide is to hook your site visitor, capture their attention, and then redirect them to another page within your site that has all of the more detailed information. So with this example of the D&D club, we're not cramming all the information about D&D club onto the slide. We're just kind of doing a little hook. And then when you click it, it takes you to the location on the site that has all of the information about that program. And this is for a couple different reasons. It's not only aesthetic choice, it's also accessibility minded. We want the detailed information to be easily digestible by screen readers. We want people to have the ability to enlarge the text or apply a contrast layer to it. And you can't really do that with a static image on a slide. So that's why it's always best to have the more detailed information on a page in text that the slide is going to link to versus having the text on the slide itself. We suggest using Canva for creating your slides, which I think a lot of folks are already using. Of course, that's free online graphic design workspace. When creating your slide, always remember that we have these navigational arrows on the left and right. So we suggest leaving 50 pixels of buffer on each side. And also keep in mind that the slides will be small on a mobile device. So any text you use should be large and have a high contrast. I heard from folks in my introductory calls that they wanted to learn more about graphic design and Canva. So I'm not an expert, a super expert in that field, but I will refer you to a LinkedIn course, which will be free to access for most of you with your library card. So I'm going to put a link to this course that I have checked out a couple of the modules in it, and I really liked it. So I can also answer questions if you are using Canva. I do know how to use it. I feel pretty confident using it. So if you are trying to do something and you want to submit a ticket, it's not like 100% the scope of what I can help with, but I'd be happy to support you with it in ways that I can. So let us go over here to our slideshow manager area. So I'm back on the desktop. I'm going to go to site manager and I'm going to go down to slideshow manager at the bottom. I'm going to get rid of that because it shouldn't be there right now. Um, so this is your slideshow collection desktop. Right now we have these slides circulating, and I want to add my summer reading club slide. And it should be right here in my slide images, but I'm not seeing it. Has this ever happened to you? You upload a slide, and then you can't find it in your slide images. Oh, I see. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt myself. I see a message from Anton. Would you like for us to hold off with questions until the end? You can drop them in the chat if you want right now, and I will answer them in the middle of the workshop if I can, if they're relevant, or I might save them till the very end. But in terms of when you want to like type the question in and add it to the chat, you can do that anytime. It just might be at the end when I get to it. Thanks for asking that question. Um, so with the slides, you upload your slide and you don't see it in your selection. What do we do? I'm sure some of you know the answer to this. I'm sure some of you have hit this roadblock before. Yes, Gwen, thank you. You might have to add the slide tag in the media section. That is exactly it. So if I go back to my media library, I see my slide, but it doesn't have a media tag. So the media tag is the first thing to look at if you're ever stuck in that situation. If you add the media tag and you still don't see your slide, send me a ticket because it's probably a bug. So this is the slide that I have created depending on what things look like when Summer Reading Club gets going, I might just make this available to everybody because it is using the official artwork for this year's Summer Reading Club. So this is my slide. It looks pretty good. I've uploaded it as a JPEG because, of course, it's a complex image with lots of text and pictures. Um, the slide looks good, but there actually is something that we could change about it to make it even better. Um, so this is another accessibility tool that I wanted to share with you today. So if you see that green color and of my background and that blue color of my text, they have some contrast, but there's a way for us to tell whether that amount of contrast is actually good enough in terms of accessibility. So this is colorcontrast.cc, and you can throw in your background color and you can put in your foreground color, which is your text color. And it's going to tell us whether we pass or fail in terms of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1. So the WCAG 2.1, there's level AA and there's level AAA, so double A, triple A. And these are just different standards. We can scroll down here and read more about what they mean when they say large or normal text. So we can see that for large text, our colors do pass, but for AAA normal, we fail. So technically, this amount of contrast is good enough. In terms of the co-op's accessibility standards, we say that our web content must meet level double A. So we've met that, but we can also take it a step further. I think that if there's an opportunity that you can always take it a step further. And also just I can demonstrate how you can make little incremental changes to these colors. Um, if we look at the foreground color, I'm going to work with the foreground color and go into this HSL hue, saturation, lightness management area. You can take the lightness slider and just start sliding it darker until you see that AAA normal turn to a pass. So I'm just going to kind of like slowly drag it until I get to pass. There it is. Okay, so this color combination is like meets the highest accessibility standards on the web. So this, yeah, this is a wonderful free resource that you can use. The creator has a little buy me a coffee up there if you ever feel like donating. But I like this tool a lot. I think it just is so fun. A way to make sure that your site is accessible, but also use a tool that has a really beautiful interface. So I have made another slide already with the corrected color. I'm going to add the media tag there as well. I have a small piece of lint in my mouse and it keeps getting stuck. So I'm just going to take a moment to brush that away. There we go. Okay. So I'll put the slide tag here. And yeah, you can see it's like a really subtle difference. It still looks great, but that text is just a bit darker. So I'm going to use this one. And with slides, you don't need to add an alt text here because there's a region to add alt text within the slideshow manager itself. So I'm going to leave that blank for now. And I'll go back to Site Manager, Slideshow Manager, and we should now see our beautiful slide here. So it's, there we go. So for this, oops. Awesome. Okay, just letting people in from the waiting room. So for this caption area, you want the top line to be your text slide title, and it's also going to be your alt text. So this one can be fairly simple. You just want it to say something like link to more information about Summer Reading Club 2025. And then the link, of course, down there, we're going to choose our beautiful landing page that we just created shortly ago. So always make sure to save the collection. The save button on this page is in kind of a weird spot because it's one that we custom built. But just always make sure to get back up there and hit the save. Of course, we have our Manitoba specific slides that are down here getting a little bit hidden. And this area, I often forget about it, but you can change how you want your slides to change, like transition, a slide, or a crossfade. And you can change how long each slide pauses for. So if you're finding that they're going a bit too quick, um, you can make a change there. Teresa, yeah, so we don't describe the actual image on the slide. Um, that's a really good question. I was kind of flip-flopping back and forth on that too. Um, but I think since this the idea of this slide is to just grab the person and get them going somewhere else, where they're going to then get a description of what the image is. Because once they get to that Summer Reading Club landing page, they're going to see that image again, and we've alt texted that one quite thoroughly. So I think for me, that's kind of how I made that decision of like just kind of stepping into the shoes of somebody who's print disabled and thinking like, are they going to want to hear that same image description twice? Or are they just going to hear a link? Oh, that's a link to more information. I'm going to click that, and then it's going to get them over to that detailed page where we have that alt text. So yeah, that's a really good question, and the answer might vary depending on what you're doing with that slide and what the path is for that person through your site. If they were going to a page that didn't have a description of that image and it was critical that they knew what was on that image, you could try to add it in there. But yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else I need to say about slideshow. Oh, okay, awesome. So I'm just going to flip over to the slideshow um, text slide that I had created. So this has changed a little bit to these dimensions are a bit bigger than they used to be. We've recently, and I'll get to this like near the end, we've recently added an option to make your site wider. I think I've implemented that for some folks, and some folks have tried it and didn't like it, but there is now a spot where you yourself can control the width of your site. So you can do the narrow one, the default, or you can make it a little bit wider to take up a bit more space on the display. So to go along with that, we've made the best practice for the size of the slide to be a bit higher resolution. So that 1320 by 396 measurement, and then of course the 50 pixel buffer. So this is also all in the manual, but I just wanted to make sure to point it out here because it is different from what it used to be. So we can't talk about Summer Reading Club without talking about events. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time looking at the events calendar, and we're going to look at creating a series. So the Summer Reading Club event series, and then we're going to look at adding a recurring event and a one-off event as well. So I'll start with events. There's a few different ways to go about this. It's like one of those things where there's a few different ways to approach what you eventually want, which is a series with some events added to it. My personal preference is to just create the series first, because mentally, I feel like that makes more sense of creating the container and then filling it with things. I feel like I'm a very visual person, so I picture like a box and then I start putting things in the box. Which to me makes more sense than creating all these things and then trying to stuff them all into the box. So I will add a new series up in the corner and we'll just call it, keep it consistent. I'm not going to fill the text field too much right now. Um, and then we could scroll down and see, of course, we don't have any events associated with it yet because we haven't made them yet, but we will be changing that. So I'm just going to publish this right away. Um, I'm not going to go step by step through creating an event just because we don't have, I don't think we have the time, but I did create, I kind of jazzed up that creating events page a little bit. And I've pre-made us some events that we can look at today. So I've created a recurring event and a standalone event. Um, so we'll take a look first at this reading with friends recurring event that I've created. I've filled everything out here. I've given it the start and end. I've done the recurring information here. And just to note, we still don't have the ability to do ticketing or RSVP for recurring events. which might change in the future, but it's not quite there yet. I'm going to add the kids event category. And I'm going to go down to event options and I'm going to do it sticky in month view. These kind of get forgotten sometimes, I think, but I like to just make sure that you know that they're there. When you make something sticky in month view, that's going to make sure that it's always showing on that kind of grid, traditional monthly calendar view. This can be helpful for days where you have multiple events and you want to make sure that the important one is always at the very top of the day, so that everybody sees it. And then this is where we're going to add it as a series. So it will, if you don't add it to a series, it's going to create itself its own series, um, which can get kind of annoying. So my advice is to always just make sure you connect it to a series here, unless you want it to start its own brand new series. And that can obviously be changed at any time. You just have to remember how to get there. So we've got our recurring event. Oh, we need to add an image. So this is something too that I wanted to cover, which is the best practice for adding images. Um, I think it's always best to kind of modify your image sizes before you upload them, or do them as soon as you upload them. Because the events calendar plugin is optimized for a 4:3 image aspect ratio. So that just means that the width is 4 units and the height is 3 units. So it's kind of that rectangular shape. So a 400 pixel wide by 300 pixel high image. I have 303 here. It's not quite perfect, but close enough. This is going to give you the best experience and give your users the best experience when looking at your events calendar. So I've had some tickets come in where, the images are getting stretched out, or the images are, some are square and some are rectangular. And that all has to do with just the way that the images were uploaded to the site. So if you're kind of making this best practice, yes, yes, Teresa, 300 by 300. So this has just recently changed. And that is, I couldn't give you an exact moment when it changed. But I think it had something to do with, and I think Teresa, it was you and I who was working through a lot of those annoying things that were happening in your events calendar specifically. But yeah, the plugin is often changing and evolving. You're still probably going to have an okay experience with 300 by 300 as long as everything is consistent. So a square image versus a rectangular image. I think you could probably still get away with doing the square image as long as everything is the same. Does that make sense? I think when we added that ability for sites to become wider or narrower, it can kind of have some weird effects there. And then this, with that issue with images getting stretched out. So, um, it could be something if you're not having issues with it right now, like if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of vibe. But if you are noticing that you're getting some stretching, it could be that there's like an inconsistency between the aspect ratios of the images that you have uploaded. But thank you for that point. It's really helpful. And probably others were wondering that as well. Um, so yeah, I do have this 400 by 300. I have a alt text here, um, and that should be good to go. I'm going to set it as a featured image, and I'm going to publish that. And then I'm going to go over to a standalone event. I don't have too much more to show you with the standalone event, but there are just a couple extra things that you can take a look at for standalone event, including the RSVP feature. So let's go down to the series. We'll add it. We'll make sure to add it to the same series here. We'll add the same featured image. Of course, you probably will want to do things differently, add a bit more dynamic quality to your images by having different ones for each event. And I'm going to use feature event for this one. So when you set something as a feature event, it's just going to be at the top of any events list anywhere on your entire site. So this is like for the big ones that you want everybody to see. And when you're finished with it being featured event, you can always come back in here and take it off. But that will make it highlighted really prominently everywhere. Um, this RSVP is already created, so I won't mess around with it too much. But this drop-down area with attendee information, right now it's all set up to gather this information, but you can always remove, add, alter, do whatever you want with that, and save it. So there's many, I feel like there's many questions often about the events calendar, and I went back and forth on how to treat it in a webinar just because a lot of the questions are very specific. So I think I wanted to just kind of dash through it and then hopefully leave space at the end for your specific events calendar questions. And yes, Samantha, you can have more than one featured event at a time. I don't know exactly how that's going to look. It'll kind of depend on the specific like aesthetic choices that you have set up for your site. So my recommendation would be try it out, and then just go visit your site as a visitor and just play around and see how it looks. If the feature events were on the same day, that might cause an issue, but basically what I could envision is that you would have your grid monthly calendar view, and the featured events would just be, they have usually a little highlight around them. I can show you what it looks like um, on the events calendar. But yeah, you should definitely be able to have more than one featured event, and the display shouldn't be affected unless they're on the same day. But yeah, we can just take a look at our events calendar here and it should show us, let's get over to June. Yeah, so this is what the featured event looks like on my site here. It's really cool. It puts the image there, but you see it does take up that entire block. So if you had a featured event on another day, it would just look the exact same on another day. But yeah, if you put two on the same day, that might not, and that's maybe not what anybody would try to do anyway. Having two featured events on the same day, like you got to have a lot of patrons coming through the door for that. um, now, I want to link the series page to our main landing page that we created. So I'm going to go back just to get to my page here. So, yeah, and like I said before, I think there are a bunch of different ways to do this. I know some people like to create a series page and then just connect everything to the series page. That's also a totally valid way of doing things, but I thought I would demonstrate this way because I thought it felt like the most straightforward. So I'll just make this a heading. So this is just how I'm going to link our landing page back to the events calendar. So I'm putting it up right at the top. I'm giving it like a nice bold header font, and then I'm just going to link it here. And you can just start typing in the name of your series, and it'll start to auto-populate and give us that link, and we can apply that. And then we can update the page, and then we'll go take a look at it. And that will take us directly to our series page. And it looks really wacky right now with all the same picture over and over again, but yours will look different. And then you see you've got your featured event right up there at the top in the list view. So as just a little bit of a recap for this tech segment, the information that I covered just in writing so that you don't have to worry about keeping it all in your brain. I can also send out the slideshow if folks need it. Um, the last sections I really wanted to cover were highlights and then just some accessibility tools. I'm trying to be mindful of the time, so I'm going to just kind of maybe do gloss over the highlights area. And I see I had a question about highlights too, so it looks like we'll talk about it more in the Q&A. But the main thing with highlights that I wanted to talk about were buttons. I know that a lot of libraries are using buttons and creating them in Canva. And I just want to show you some resources that you could use when you're creating your buttons. So these ones, of course, are with text on them. Using simple text is a really good practice. People like to also use like common icons, like a letter for email or, a computer for computer booking, that kind of thing. And I wanted to just show you, Canva has this free icon library that you can take from to create your buttons. And then there's also the Noun project. I'll put the links to both of these in the chat. I like the Noun project. If you make yourself a little so the only thing with the noun project, it's free to use, but you need to give what's called attribution, or just, basically say where you got the images from. You can do that on a dedicated credits page somewhere else on your site, or you can add it into the alt text or metadata, or not the alt text, but into the metadata. But this is a really good resource. There's like millions and millions of cool icons on here. I would suggest that keep in mind that different symbols don't always mean the same thing to different communities or cultures. So, sticking with recognizable ones, looking to other larger institutions, other libraries, government services, other LibPress libraries, to see what symbols they're using for certain things, and just try to kind of match what other folks are doing, just so you don't inadvertently cause some confusion. Um, if you're creating buttons in Canva, best practice for size, you don't really need to worry too much about the height, but the width, you want to make sure the width stays in this usable area in one highlight column. So they should be about 250 pixels wide. This one's 250-ish, and it can be up to 400. So it depends on the look. So if you want it to go right edge to edge, like with the upcoming events, you could use 400. If your site is on this specific width. If your site is narrower, you can use 250. So I would say um, I'll show you in the customizer where you can tell what site width your site is using, and then you can make your choice from there. Um, so just looking at these buttons here, like they look great, right? I wanted to give another perspective though from an accessibility standpoint. We have the Sally accessibility tool. That's this little person in the purple and blue circle down in the corner. I know a lot of libraries are already using that, which is great. But if you don't have that enabled on your site yet, you can ask me to do that for you for no charge. And what it does is it gives you, as the site manager or admin, it gives you a tool to identify and fix accessibility issues on whatever page of your site that you're currently on. So if I click it, it's going to give me a bunch of errors and warnings. And these are solutions that are meant to be easy to be done from the front end admin user side of things. So like you and I, site managers, it shouldn't be anything on the coding side. So you're really empowered to be able to fix these on your own. And so if you hover over the error, it tells you exactly what's wrong and exactly how to fix it. So these don't have alt text, which is a huge issue. If somebody was using a screen reader, they might not even be told that these buttons exist, or they might just be told that it is a decorative image. So that's really helpful to know, because as a person with vision, you might look at that and say, oh, that looks totally fine. But for somebody with a screen reader, they would have a really bad experience with our homepage. Another accessibility tool that is free to add on is this Show Preferences tool up in the top corner. This one is facing your visitors. So I'll just open that really quickly, and you can see all the different types of things that they could change. So adding contrast, text size, that kind of thing. And you can reset it and you can hide it. So yeah, that's kind of just what I had to share on highlights and accessibility. Um, the customizer is something I wanted to look at, but I'm actually going to skip it just in the interest of giving us more time for Q&A. But I did just want to, this was something that came through my introductory calls and the feedback survey that Scott sent out. There was some instances where folks weren't sure what they could control and edit on their own. So things like revamping your color palette, replacing your logo, and changing the width of your site. So that those kinds of things are all in the customize. Just because I mentioned it a few times already, I'll just show you in the LibPress theme settings. This use old content width is a toggle that you can change. So you can pop it on and off, and that will give you these two different site widths. So the old version that you would have gotten if you've been with LibPress for a really long time, you will have the old narrow one, and you'll see these 250 pixel buttons fit really nicely there. But if you're using the wide one, you have a lot of white space. So you could make those 400 pixel wide buttons. Thank you for watching this video. For more information, please visit the BC Libraries Cooperative website.